It's so good to see all of you here, and I would like to invite you to come back with me to a Friday in June 1947. Some history. Harry S. Truman was president. It cost 3 cents to mail a letter. Gasoline was 24 cents a gallon. Kids under 12 could get into the movies for 25 cents, and I was 11 years old. And I was at my grandma's, and I had spent many, many times with her over those past years, beginning around the time of World War II when I was 5 and a half. Grandma lived in a part of Los Angeles that we called the southwest part, but an hour or so distance from my home in San Pedro, which was also known as the Los Angeles Harbor. Now, the harbor town and the beach was very exciting to be in, particularly until I became very anxious during the wartime. When I was around 7 and a half, I became aware of the Navy ships coming in, coming out, and then carrying troops over to the war zones, the ships coming to our dry docks. We had the MPs were patrolling, the military police controlling our harbor, our beach, and we had drills, we had blackouts, and adults were talking in sort of whispers about war. And then I would hear words like Auschwitz and family members. And at that time also, my dad was now in service in the Solomon Islands, and my mother was working very hard to earn a living and to make a home. So my grandmother's home was my safe harbor. Now, on this particular Friday in 1947, it was her day of cooking and baking. She did it every Friday to get ready for Shabbat, for our Sabbath, which began on Friday night into Saturday. But she seemed a little tired. Now, I was, that week that I was with her, a little hypervigilant because as my mother was driving me out there, she said, for the first time in all of those my visits with her, "Now, Sandra, Grandma's not feeling very well. She may be a little tired. Don't wear her out." And so I spent those few days watching, and yes, Grandma was tired. She did rest. And came Friday, it was her day to cook. It didn't matter. So I also was very helpful. And one of the things that she was going to bake was her family famous banana nut cake. And I loved it. And when she baked, and even when she cooked, the kitchen, which to me was her center of her home, was filled with all of these wonderful fragrances. Now, as she was getting things ready, and I was helping her pull out the ingredients and getting out her bowls, I remembered that my mother and her friends exchanged recipes. So I said in my most grown-up 11-year-old voice, "Grandmother, I would just love to have your banana cake recipe. Would you give it to me?" And she said, "Oy vey, I don't have it written down. It's in my head. It's been in my head since I was a girl in Poland." And when she saw my face, my disappointed face, she said, "But I have an idea. Why don't you get paper, pencil, and write down everything you see me do? And then you'll have the recipe. Okay?" And I thought, what could go wrong? So I got my pencil and my paper, and I watched her with the ingredients. And she, after washing her hands, she reached into the bag of flour and by handfuls put it into the bowl. 6 handfuls of flour. And then she shook the bowl up and looked at it and said, "Enough, enough." Then it was a handful of sugar. She used a coffee spoon for the baking powder, a pinch of salt, another handful of nuts. Now, I could see how many eggs there were. I could count the yolks, and how many bananas there were, which I helped mash up in between doing the writing. And she is now mixing up her batter. And then I remembered, actually, this recipe that I was writing down didn't look like my mother's. I didn't see a cup of this, a half a cup of that. It was just handfuls. But again, I thought, why worry? This was Grandma's famous cake. The batter was made, put into the cake pan, put into the preheated oven, and we waited. And about an hour later, the fragrance from that cake came floating out, and it was wonderful. The timer rang, opened it up, the oven door. She pulled it out, set it aside to cool off. When it was ready, she took it out of the pan, put it on a cake dish, and when it was even cooler, she took powdered sugar and sprinkled it around like snow. And so I wrote all that down. And when I got home from that visit with Grandma, I said to my mom and Dad, I've got Grandma's recipe, and maybe I can make it next Sunday. And they, of course, said, of course, we'll have it with our Sunday dinner. And so Sunday came, got out the ingredients, got the bowls, got the cake pan ready, got the oven preheated, washed my hands, and began the handfuls. 1 handful, 2 handfuls, 6 handfuls of flour, the sugar, the handful, took my mother's coffee spoon and thought I was doing it okay with the baking powder. I forgot that my grandma talked about a pour of vanilla. And so I poured vanilla and mixed it all into the eggs, the bananas, did it all like I saw my grandma doing, poured it in the cake pan, put it in the oven, waited an hour. It smelled wonderful. The timer rang, took it out, and my mother, for the event, put out her crystal cake dish with her silver cake knife that I could use. And so the cake was out now. It was cooling. When it was ready, I put it on the cake plate. I waited longer till it got cooler, put the powdered sugar around, and there my parents saw it before dinner, and they oohed and they awed. Dinner came. It's time now for the dessert. I got out the cake plates, the dessert forks, brought the cake over, again more oohs and ahs, took the silver cake knife and began to cut. And I'm cutting, and I'm working hard, and I'm thinking, do sterling silver cake knives get dull? I wasn't sure, but I worked it. I got out those 3 slices, passed them to my parents. We took our first bite. I kid you not, it was hard as a rock. I cried. My parents were very, very comforting. Now, I never told my grandmother about my fiasco because just a few weeks later from that visit, she became very, very ill. It was hospitalizations, it was surgery, it was recovering at our home until we lost her in May of the following year. And when I think about her, which is often, I think of how she brought and what she brought to our relationship. And to use a baker's term, she used some special ingredients. She used handfuls of patience, handfuls of encouragement, and a great pouring of love. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Thank you.